everyone, and welcome to my first book haul. So May is AAPI History Month. I thought I'd show you a lot of the books that I've accumulated in the last few months that are by AAPI authors, and some of these are by East Asian authors from China, South Korea, and Japan, and they have been translated. So most of this stack is actually sci-fi fantasy. I feel like I read a lot of literary fiction in April, so I'm ready for a change. But because I'm traveling in May, I don't have a TBR and I don't really expect to get through a lot of this. I think this will probably be my physical TBR for the next 2, 3, or even 4 months. Anyway, I'm really excited about these. Let's dive into the books. So let's start with a brand new publication that I have been excited about since last year. This is They Bloom at Night by Trang Tran. So this is a horror story that's set in Mercy, Louisiana, post-hurricane. Quite literally, something is in the water. So there's like strange algae blooms and people are disappearing. I haven't read a lot of horror this year. I think the only one that I've read was Pet Sematary by Stephen King. So super excited to pick up another horror book. And I think this premise is pretty unique. I don't think I've read another kind of water-based horror story. And just look at this cover. It's just so gorgeous. I think ever since I saw this book, I've wanted it. Anyway, yeah, super excited about this one. Next, I have a memoir. This is Slow Noodles by Chantha Nguon. So I think this has to do with Cambodian contemporary history. I think it's set before the dictator Pol Pot took power. So it's like before the time of Khmer Rouge. And the author reminisces on her family life and also 2 decades in exile, first in Saigon and then in a refugee camp in Thailand. But through all of it, food is a common theme and a common thread. And I think this book has some recipes in it as well. So that would be really interesting. I haven't read a lot about Cambodia. I only know these like just very abstract terms of Khmer Rouge, and I don't exactly know the details of that part of the history. So I'm really excited to learn about it through this book. Next, I have a YA fantasy duology. These are Gearbreakers and Godslayers by Zoe Hanna Mikuta. So these are secondhand, and this one is very shiny because it's an ex-library copy, so it has like a protective plastic layer. And this one, the dust jacket is missing, so I didn't receive the dust jacket of this book. And I will insert the cover art for this book because it's really gorgeous. It's got the magenta and the cyan color scheme that matches the sequel. But I already finished this one and I just started into the second book. So I think these books are described as steampunk fantasy. They have these like giant mechas in the story. They're like 200 feet tall. I think they're reminiscent of the machines that are piloted by humans in the movie Pacific Rim, if you've seen that. So one of the protagonists, Sona, was like trained at an academy called the Wind-Up Academy to be a wind-up pilot that pilots all of these machines. And the other protagonist, Eris, is one of the Gearbreakers. So they're kind of a rebel group that they break these machines and they stop them from helping like the repressive regime of Godolia. So yeah, I'm enjoying these stories so far, and I will be sure to include them in my end of the month reading wrap-up. And next, I bought 2 books from Kazuo Ishiguro. I read Klara and the Sun earlier in this year. I think it was January. I'll link that review down below. So then I bought 2 more from him. This one is Never Let Me Go. I think this is the much more well-known one. I think it's set in a private school, but it has some sort of like mysterious, almost like horror-like element. I think it's described as dark academia quite often, and it might have some like sci-fi undertones as well, just like Klara and the Sun. And this one, Nocturnes, this is a short story collection. It has 5 stories and they're all inspired by music. So I'm really excited about that. I love music and I think this will be a great read. Next, I have a novel by a Chinese author that's translated into English. This is Aftershock by Ling. It's another shiny ex-library copy. So I think this is set either during or after the Tangshan earthquake, which is kind of the worst earthquake in Chinese history. So I think the story begins in 1976 when that earthquake happened. And then this is the story of the protagonist's mother trying to protect her child through this horrendous natural disaster disaster. And then 30 years later, she has moved to Canada. So it's kind of a combination of her, I guess, immigration experience and reconnecting with her mother. And I guess an exploration of how this natural disaster affected their family relationship. So yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about this novel. Very excited to dig into it. And this was a great find in the used book superstore that I go to. This is The Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan. I think this is kind of like a canonical work for the Asian American, I think specifically Chinese American immigration experience. It features 4 Chinese women that have recently moved to San Francisco, and it's the story of their lives trying to navigate this city and their experience, and I think their relationship with their daughter as well. So this is one of those books that I should have read already, should have read a long time ago. So I'm excited to make up for that and finally read this modern classic. Next, I bought Connie Chung's Memoir. So it's just called Connie, and it is by Connie Chung. I think, if I remember correctly, she is the first Asian American news anchor on like a major TV network. So I think this is the story of her career and like navigating a quite literally a white man's world. I mean, if you look at this photo, you can see her at the center of it, kind of looking a little bit lonely as like the only Asian American woman in that group. Everyone around her is, you know, a white guy. So yeah, I'm not terribly familiar with the world of journalism and news broadcasting. So I'm really curious to see how her career developed. And she's just such a great inspiration. I can't wait to dive into this book. Next, I bought 2 books from the author C-Pam Zhang. The first one is called How Much of These Hills is Gold? And this was longlisted for the Booker Prize. And the other one is called Land of Milk and Honey. So I have heard about both of these books for quite a while. I think they're both about the immigration experience and how, I guess, the promise of the American dream actually compares to the real struggles and striving and difficulties that immigrant families face. And this author has been recognized by quite a few awards. So like I mentioned, she was longlisted for the 2020 Booker Award, and she was also a National Book Award 5 Under 35 honoree. So very excited to check out her writing. The next one is by a Korean American author. This is Beasts of a Little Land by Juhea Kim. To be completely honest with you, I picked this book up from the used bookstore purely for the cover art. It's just so gorgeous and it just instantly caught my eye, and I just had to bring it home. So this author was born in Korea and she immigrated to America at the age of 9. So this story is set in 1917 in occupied Korea when a hunter that's on the brink of starvation saves a young Japanese officer from a tiger attack. Oh, so that's where this gorgeous tiger on the cover comes from. And then in the aftermath of this event, it features a young girl who became involved in the revolutionary fight for independence. So again, this is a period of, I guess, modern history that I'm not terribly familiar with, and I'm really excited to learn more about it from a Korean American author. Okay, this next one is really exciting. This is Waist Tide, and look at this gorgeous cyberpunk kind of cover. And this is by Chinese author Chen Qiufan and is translated by none other than Ken Liu. So he's the translator for The Three-Body Problem, and he also wrote the Dandelion Dynasty fantasy series, and I reviewed his short story collection earlier in the year. So I'm very familiar with the quality of his writing and the quality of his translation. So this story, I think, is about digital waste. The protagonist, Mimi, is a waste worker on Silicon Isle, where electronics from cell phones and laptops to bots and bionic limbs are set to be recycled. So the protagonist, Mimi, is one of many migrant workers that all come to this island and try to work for a better life. But there's also a lot of conflict between local gangs and eco-terrorists and foreign investors, and they're all kind of centered around this booming electronic industry in China. So I'm really excited about this story, and on the back it features a blurb from Liu Cixin, the author of The Three-Body Problem, that describes this as the pinnacle of near-future science fiction. So very exciting. And the next one is another volume that I picked up because I was pulled in by the cover, but I mean, look at it. This is Phoenix Extravagant by Yunha Lee. I think he's actually quite a well-known author in the sci-fi fantasy world. It's just new to me because I'm relatively new to those genres. And this story has dragons and art and revolution. So the protagonist is a subversive who is also an artist, and he was commissioned by the Ministry of Armor to paint the mystical sigils that animate the occupying government's automaton soldiers. But then he discovers the depth of the government's crimes and that the pigments that they use are actually magic. And they're going to steal a dragon automaton. I guess that's the one that's imagined on this cover. So this is definitely a very unique premise. I don't think I've ever read any other story that combines dragons and art and revolution all in this great sci-fi kind of action-packed story. And it's got recommendations by Adrian Tchaikovsky and Anne Leckie, so definitely super excited about this one. And I think this author has a new book out in 2024 that I will also keep an eye on. Next, I have another translated sci-fi. This is Vagabonds by Hao Jingfang. This is also translated by Ken Liu. I think he kind of has a monopoly on new sci-fi stories that are published in China. He's translating all of them. So this story is set on Mars. In 2096, colonized Mars breaks away from Earth, beginning another Cold War, one based on the Iron Curtain of space. And then in 2196, a delegation of young Martians, including the consul of Mars's granddaughter, Luo Ying, is sent to live on Earth for 5 years in an attempt at reconciliation. And then in 2201, Luo Ying and the other delegates return and find themselves no longer belonging to either Mars or Earth. So this author is the first Chinese woman to ever win a Hugo. She won it with her novelette called Folding Beijing, and it's also translated by Ken Liu. I also got 2 short story collections by Ted Chiang. I got Arrival and Exhalation. So I think this one was originally published as Stories of Your Life and Others, and that short story was adapted into the film Arrival, and then I think in reprints they've changed the name of the book to reflect the movie adaptation that it received. So this author has won 4 Nebulas, 4 Hugos, and 4 Locus Awards. So he is highly decorated, and I've never read anything by him, so I'm really curious to see his writing. And I did enjoy the film Arrival a lot, so I'm very interested in seeing the original inspiration for that film. Next, I have a translated fantasy. This is Blood of the Old Kings by Sun Il Kim, and it is translated by Anton Her, who also translated Cursed Bunnies and Your Utopia by Bora Chung, and those were 2 of my favorite short story collections of all time. This story is set in an empire run on necromancy, and the protagonist was born with magic. Her name is Ariane, and then the voice of a long-dead sorcerer started to speak in her head. It also features a 7-eyed dragon who also wears the Empire's chains. So this is a story that has magic and dragon and vengeance and swords. This was originally published in South Korea in 2016, and this translation just came out in 2024. And I think the sequel to this is releasing this year. I don't know if it's going to be a duology or trilogy or maybe even longer, but this is the beginning of a series that I'm very excited to launch into. Next, I have a literary fiction by a Hawaiian author. This is Blues Hanging by Lois N. Yamanaka. This story is written in Hawaiian Pidgin, which is a unique local dialect, and it features the life of 3 children after the death of their mother. So this is a story of family and love, and it's described as comic and heart-wrenching. So I feel like the only things that I know about Hawaii are through the eyes of a tourist, so I'm really excited to read from a local author and see some kind of genuine, authentic slice of life of Hawaii. So the next title is probably instantly recognizable to a lot of you that have been following BookTube for a while. This is The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang. I finally picked up this book. So I read Blood Over Brighthaven, I think it was February, and I immediately decided that I will check out this book as well. Finally got my hands on it. This is a 600-page chunker, but I adored this author so much after reading that other book. I'm just super excited to dive into this story. So the Sword of Kaigen refers to an island that's on the edge of the Kaiganese Empire, and the fighters on this island have kind of held the enemy of the empire at bay. That's why they've earned the name the Sword of Kaigen. And on this island, there's this legendary family called the Mikuta family, and I think they have the power to control water, so they can like wield ice as weapons. And the 14-year-old Mamoru, who is the young son of this family, is trying to master their fighting technique. And a woman called Misaki, who married into this family, used to be a fighter in her youthful days. She went to the same academy that Mamoru went to, but then she kind of left that life behind to become a housewife and a mother. And then the Mikuta family is faced with war once again, so we will see whether they can defend the empire once more or tear each other apart. So this story is a combination of fantasy and martial arts, and I really did like the world building and character development capabilities of this author, so I'm very excited to dive into this 600-page chonker. And then I finally got my hands on Jade City by Fonda Lee. So I've heard about this fantasy for so long now. This is the first in a trilogy. I think the following one is called Jade War, and then there's Jade Legacy. So there are a total of 3 books. This is another one that has like magical elements and also martial arts. So this story is set in Kikon. I think it's an island that's inspired by Hong Kong, possibly. So the island has these green bone warriors that use magical jade to enhance their abilities. They're like very powerful family clans that are trying to fight for control of the capital city of the Kikon Island. And I think the author herself is a martial artist. So I am expecting very high caliber action coordination and a very thrilling plot from this book. I also got How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Nagamatsu. This is his debut novel that was compared to Cloud Atlas and Station 11. It begins in 2030 when a grieving archaeologist arrives in the Arctic Circle to continue the work of his recently deceased daughter. And they found the remains of a girl who appears to have died of an ancient virus. And then this virus became unleashed and it became the Arctic Plague. So this story, I think, is the generational aftermath of this event. This is a story that spans continents, centuries, and even celestial bodies, and it is about the resilience of the human spirit. It sounds very imaginative, and I think it has interconnected characters, so I'm really curious to find out what's in this story. Next, I have a debut speculative fiction. This is The Deep Sky by Yumi Kitase. In this story, Earth's environment has collapsed and a spaceship is leaving Earth carrying 8 people that was supposed to be humanity's last hope. But on their way, a bomb exploded that killed 3 of them and knocks the ship off course. And one of them is the prime suspect. So the crew is turning on each other, and Asuka, who is bearing all of this suspicion, has to find the culprit. So this sounds like it has sci-fi and mystery and thriller kind of elements. I'm really looking forward to it. Last but definitely not least, I have another debut novel by an Asian American author. This is The Book of M by Peng Shepherd. This one was published in 2018, and I think it's generated quite a bit of buzz in the fantasy world, so I'm a little bit behind the hype train. In this story, there's an unexplained phenomenon where people's shadows would disappear, and with this disappearance, they gain magic, but they also lose all of their memories. A couple called Ori and Max thought they had escaped this phenomenon by hiding in the woods, but one day Max's shadow disappeared too. So she was worried that the more she forgets, the more dangerous she'll become, so she ran away from Ori, and then Ori was determined to find her. So I'm always interested in themes of memory and the loss of memory. I guess the loss of memory is kind of a great fear of mine. And it also sounds like there's this deep connection between the characters and the love that's between them that I think will make this a very enjoyable read for me. So those are all the books that I recently bought that feature either Asian or AAPI authors. I just did a quick count. There's 24 of them, so it's a big, exciting stack. And most of these are actually secondhand, so I bought them either from the used bookstore or ordered them online for between like $5 and $8. And by all means, you don't need to be spending a huge fortune on books, and I definitely recommend that you look for these titles and these authors in your local library and also through Libby, where you can borrow ebooks and audiobooks. But any support that you can show authors are of course always appreciated, especially in a month that celebrates their heritage. And if you have any questions about any of these volumes, please leave them in the comments below. And if you would like to request a specific review of any of these books, please also let me know in the comments. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this book haul. So I will be traveling very soon. I'm leaving on Wednesday, and then the next time I see you will be sometime in June. In the meantime, take care. Thank you so much for watching my book haul, and see you next time.